Is this it for the Astros? There appears to be a lot of change on the horizon in Houston, so we decide if this is the last dance for the Astros. But hold up. Who said this Astros run was even a dynasty? You are not going to want to miss that discussion. This is all up next on the Bush League Bros. Let's go.
Now, certainly plenty of fanfare between these two brothers.
Just complete Bush League.
The little brother just trying to annoy big brother.
If you look at it on the surface, it's Bush League.
Something about that sticks in my craw.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Bush League Bros, partner of the House Call Sports Network. I'm here with Taylor. My name is Matt, and today we are getting into all things Astros, if their run is over and if they are even a dynasty. But before we get into that, please do us a favor and hit those like and subscribe buttons. We need all the help we can get. We are just starting this channel, so if you can help out, that would be greatly appreciated. But for all 8 people who have seen us before in the House Call Sports, you know exactly how we got to start off this new channel, and that is with the Houston Astros. Obviously, last year falling short in the ALCS to the Texas Rangers in 7 games, a place they have been each of the last 7 years. But this team has a lot of moving parts right now, some aging players, their desire to be under the competitive tax threshold as well, and some star players who are becoming free agents soon. So Taylor, I'm going to you, man. Is this the last dance for the Houston Astros? Is their competitive window closing after the 2024 season?
Well, no, I don't think their window is closing after the 2024 season. I think they're going to be competitive for a little bit longer. But I think if you look anything past 2025, I think that window appears to be closing real fast.
Yikes.
But Matt, according to Jim Crane, the owner of the Astros, the window's always open, which is a great thing to say if you want to kind of foster that winning culture in your organization. But it's also not a very sustainable approach to building a roster over a long period of time. And I'm mentioning Crane because he's actually one of my biggest concerns regarding their competitive window into the latter half of the 2020s. Because, I mean, first of all, the fallout with James Click after the 2022 World Series is a big red flag for me. Post sign stealing scandal, we've seen Crane become one of those owners that always seems to like pry his way into making baseball decisions that he shouldn't be a part of, which is something he didn't really do when Jeff Luhnow was the GM. And once owners start doing that, I feel like you rarely see them relinquish that control and give it back to the GM. Quick review of the situation with Click. After the World Series, they offered Click an insulting, is what they termed it, an insulting 1-year extension that Click declined. And they had a bunch of stylistic differences over the course of that deal. And I don't know the semantics of it, but Click was either let go or fired. I think technically he was fired. Doesn't really matter. He wasn't back the next year. In between Click's departure and the hiring of Dana Brown, Crane basically appointed himself the president of baseball operations and made a bunch of moves that weren't really very good. First of all, the Jose Abreu contract, which, at the time didn't look that bad. I mean, I think when we talked about it on the show, we were like, a bit of an overpay, but like he should be pretty good in that lineup. That one has not aged well at all, though. The one that nobody thought was good from the start was the Rafael Montero signing, 3-year, $34.5 million deal, which, has not looked good at all so far. And it seems like Crane was also the major factor in Christian Javier's 5-year extension, which, Javier was also not good last year, but maybe that didn't look too bad at the time, but just another instance of him maybe making a decision that should be left to baseball people. And he also has apparently confided and has close advisors in Jeff Bagwell and Reggie Jackson. And they're the kind of guys that are on the record as saying you don't play baseball with computers, which is absolutely true. There's not an iMac out there at shortstop, but you do need computers to help you build a roster in a smart way. I truly do believe that. There are a lot of things that go behind this. And I think that you don't play baseball with computers is just way too much of an oversimplification. And current GM, Dana Brown, goes on MLB Network over the winter meetings. And then when asked if they think that they're going to go through a bit of a down spell here because of all these contracts that are coming up, he says no, because we're going to relentlessly acquire players. And it's like, okay, well, to relentlessly acquire players, there are a few ways to do that. The first thing is you can trade for them using prospect capital. But guess what? You don't have any more of that because you used the last of it up with the Verlander deal last year, you have one of the worst farm systems in the league. No top 100 prospects anymore. They just updated that list. The Astros have 0 of them. They have like enough prospects to maybe make one impact trade, if that. And that's me being pretty generous there. And to be fair, the Verlander move, I think, was a good move at the time. It was good. They needed pitching. It was a good clubhouse move. They got the Mets to eat a ton of that contract. But those are the kind of moves you can't be making all the time when you're coming up against these financial barriers that they're going to be coming up against in the next couple of years. And so they're limited in their trade capacity right now. That means if you want to relentlessly acquire players, you're going to have to sign them, which they've already done this year. Josh Hader, 5-year, $95 million deal. And that move also has Jim Crane written all over it, because it's just another one of those moves where it's like, we need people in the bullpen. Let's get the best bullpen arm. Like, that's such an owner mentality to take into a signing. And granted, they did need help in the bullpen. Neris, Maton, and Stanek, who accounted for over a third of the Astros innings out of the bullpen, are all gone. So they did need to fill that space. But giving a bullpen arm $19 million over the next 5 years just doesn't seem like a very prudent way to be spending your cash when you have Altuve and Bregman entering contract years and you still haven't locked up Kyle Tucker or Framber Valdez. That's crazy to me. So I think the Hader move is going to be great for them this year, because obviously he's a stud and now they have 3 elite arms in the back end. But after that, I don't like the way that deal looks. And in 2025, they already have a lot of bad money on the books. They're going to be paying a 38-year-old Jose Abreu $19.5 million. Josh Hader, $19 million. McCullers, who has serious injury concerns, $17.7 million. A 42-year-old Justin Verlander, whose strikeout rate decreased by 6% from 2022 to 23, $17.5 million. Yordan Alvarez, $19 million. That's the only one I really like. Good. 36-year-old Ryan Presley is going to be making $14 million. A 34-year-old Rafael Montero is going to be making $11.5 million. Christian Javier, $12.8. And their backup catcher, Victor Carantini, $6 million. Those are all the salary numbers that are going to count towards their tax threshold. And when you add all that up, they're already halfway to the tax threshold for 2025, which I think is like $241 million. So outside of a couple of those are all bad. And that's not counting the arbitration numbers for Kyle Tucker and Framber Valdez. And those are going to be pricey, because Kyle Tucker is like a top 5 MVP candidate and Framber Valdez is a top tier starting pitcher. So I'm not an expert on the contract stuff necessarily, but that's a lot of money on the books that isn't very good. You have none of your core players really locked up outside of like Christian Javier and Yordan Alvarez. Like, this is not looking great for them. Like, they're going to need to find ways to offload some of these bad deals if they want to relentlessly acquire players over the next few years, because the only other option is you draft them. And, those guys aren't going to be ready for a while. And the only other thing you can do is make those little marginal trades, those itty bitty marginal trades, which to their credit, they actually recently did. They traded for Trey Cabbage, who was just DFA'd by the Angels for some reason. They continued to make just ridiculous moves, but that's a perfect move for them to be making, because it basically costs them nothing. He's a great depth arm. He can slot into first, any of the outfield spots, good bat, good speed. Like, those are the kind of moves they need to be making, since they can't do anything else, since they're handcuffed financially with everything. So Matt, I guess my whole point here is there just seems to be a disconnect between the baseball operations side and the financial side. And I'm not seeing a plan from them as to how that's going to be reconciled. I don't understand why none of the guys they need to have extended are locked up. Like, how have Altuve, Bregman, Tucker, and Valdez all not received contracts yet? The market is only getting crazier, so it's only getting more expensive to get these guys. Like, can you imagine if Matt Chapman gets a bigger deal than we think? Like, what's that going to do to Bregman's number? Bregman, the first thing Bregman's camp is going to do and be like, yo, Matt Chapman is making this much. We want way more than that. Yep. Like, that's not going to be good for the Astros. And Kyle Tucker is going to go and put huge numbers up this year. His price is going to go up. So I don't think 2024 is the end for them. I think 2025 is going to be a solid year. After that, I don't know what they're going to do. Like, they've got so much bad money on the books and they just don't seem to be doing anything about it. So I'm thinking that 2025 might be the last like great season you see from them.
So Taylor, you notice how when you were going, I just sat over here with a big smile on my face and let you cook. Like, I just let you cook on that one because you were cooking. Yeah. But you did say at the start and you did say at the end, like, yes, their competitive window is still open. But then every single piece of evidence you gave was like, it's not open. Like, it's open for a limited period of time. It's
is
a
what I'm
limited,
saying.
It's a limited time offering. Stay tuned.
Exactly.
That is a limited time offering.
Yeah, we'll throw the lower third down there for limited time offerings.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, Taylor, what am I going to argue with what you just said? I mean, you were 100% right. The only difference that we have is the takeaway. I think my takeaway is basically on everything that you said. Yes, this is their last dance. This is going to be 2024 is going to be the end of their competitive window, because I'm just like you. I have big questions about this team all over the diamond, not just for the future, but for this season as well. First, let me just say, even though they have two teams in their division that are for sure they are going to be ahead of next year, they have two awful teams that I'm absolutely convinced they'll be ahead of. There's two teams that I am not at all convinced that they'll finish ahead of in that division this year as well. Okay, the A's and the Angels are walkovers. We know they won't put up a fight. We know you're going to walk over them. The Astros are going to finish ahead of them. But we know that the Texas Rangers absolutely will put up a fight, considering they had the exact same record as the Astros last year and then beat them 4 times in their house, otherwise known as Globe Life South, okay, in the ALCS. Frankly, they were better all year last year. You look at the run differential, you just look at the team in general, they were a better team, okay? Then there's the Mariners where, listen, okay, I know it's been a weird offseason in Seattle, no doubt, but with the pitching that this team has had and then some of the offensive additions they've had as of late, I mean, they're still going to be wildly competitive this year in the AL West. And we saw that come to fruition last year because no team in that division had more than 90 wins, but the Mariners, Rangers, and Astros were all in that 88 to 90 win range. So their margin for error just isn't there anymore. They don't have the same margin of error they had, a few years back. And last year, they won their least amount of games in this quote unquote dynasty, which we'll get to later, that they ever have in a full season since 2016. So it's not all sunshines and rainbows in the AL West. They are not just going to walk through these teams in the AL West. Now, let's get to some of these individual players. Listen, okay, Altuve is still great. I don't like him, but he's still great. Okay. However, he's going to turn 34 during the season. And like you mentioned, Taylor, he's going to be a free agent after the season as well. And last year he missed 72 games. That's concerning for a player who's played a lot of baseball, especially postseason baseball, a lot of extra baseball in his major league career. And then, like you mentioned, Taylor, Jose Abreu's 37. And even though he was a lot better in the second half, he showed so much slippage throughout the course of the season. It was ridiculous. Verlander's 40. And while Verlander is still great, like you said as well, he showed some slippage, but he ain't going to be able to sustain this forever, especially with all the innings he's accumulated in his career and having Tommy John so late in his career. That's not good. Like you said, Taylor, Lance McCullers, when he pitches, is awesome. The problem is he doesn't pitch. He's had 47 starts since 2018. That's less than 10 starts a year over the last half decade. That ain't great. There are other young starters, like you mentioned, Brown and Javier, underwhelming. Bregman, upcoming free agent. Are you trading him, or does he walk in free agency? How much you're going to have to pay him? The bullpen lost Neris, like you said, Maton, Stanek. Those are 3 out of their 5 most used bullpen arms last year that won't be there. Presley's 35 and he's going to be a free agent soon. Montero was pretty bad last year and he's 33. Hader and Abreu are great, but are they going to be as great as they were last year? I'm not convinced at that. They also lost Maldonado, where even though he doesn't hit, everybody talks about how well he did with their pitching staff all year last year. And then, like you mentioned, Taylor, the main guys I don't have concerns about are Kyle Tucker, Yordan Alvarez, and Framber Valdez, where even Yordan still missed 80 games over the last 2 years. He's missed a ton of baseball games the last couple of years. And then, like you mentioned, they're going to have to pay Kyle Tucker because he's a free agent after the 25 season, and Framber's a free agent after the 25 season as well. So I just went through almost everyone on the team, and I have real concerns about almost all of them. So that's without mentioning that they also lost Dusty Baker as a manager and a clubhouse presence. Now they're bringing in Joe Espada in a spot he's never managed before, thrown into a team that is 100% win now mode. Like you have to win the World Series now if you're the Astros. By the way, Taylor, like you mentioned, new GM, but because they also have one of the worst farm systems in baseball right now. So yes, for all of you wondering and watching us for the first time, I don't like the Astros one bit, okay? Just so you guys know, I do not like them. It's mainly because of their stuck-up and delusional fans that have maybe not liked them the most, okay? But I just gave a ton of objective, factual, just from an analysis perspective reasons why this is absolutely their last dance. And if they don't win it this year, we won't see them for a long time. And Taylor, as a guy on Twitter said about LeBron James 10 years ago, this fuckery can't go on much longer, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, man. It's a little frightening. And it's funny because you look at what led to their meteoric rise. How did they become that how did they transform from that 50-win team to that 100-win team? And it was drafting. It was creating that sustainable farm system. And it was like developing all these players. And it's like they still want to keep their competitive window open, but they're not doing any of that anymore. They're trading away basically anyone in their farm system that has value for big league ready pieces now. And it's like, that's all well and good, but at a certain point, you also need to restock the farm because you're going to need those guys that can come up and contribute that are still on those pre-arb deals and on those arb deals. And, even some of their guys that are like in arbitration now you're going to have to pay them more too. Like Luis Garcia, who's also coming off an injury. Like he's going to start making more in arbitration. Like Urquidy is going to be making more. Even like Mauricio Dubon is going to be making more in arbitration. And like, the fact that they're paying the three relievers combined $44.5 million in Montero, Hader, and Presley. Like that's insane to me. Like it's just insane to me. Like if you're up against these financial walls, you need to be smarter about how you spend money. And the first way you do that, the easiest way to do that is not spend a bunch of money in the bullpen, because that's where you can find those guys that are on the margins and make them good. We see so many teams do that.
And they've been good at that historically too.
Exactly. And they've been good at that. It's like, I don't understand. That's why this Hader deal, it was kind of a shock to me at first when I saw that, because it was like, they've got two really good relievers back there already. Obviously Presley's getting older, but he's proven. And it's like, even if he falters, they've got Brian Abreu, who's an absolute stud that can fill in that role. So it was really confusing to me. And then when I realized how many arms they lost, I was like, okay, well, that makes a little bit more sense. But then I always come back to like, you didn't need to give out the biggest free agent reliever contract ever this offseason. This was not the time for you to do this. Like you have so many other concerns that you need to address. And it's like now to address those concerns, like they're going to have to, if they want to keep these guys, like they're going to be soaring over that luxury tax. Yep. So I have a feeling I have a very strong feeling Bregman is not going to be on the team next year, because I think that Altuve is more likely to take a slightly more friendly deal, especially to the team, especially because he is a little bit older. Like I said, with Matt Chapman, like, Bregman's going to be able to go out into free agency because he's only 30, I think, right now. And he's going to be able to get like a big money contract. And I mean, if Kyle Tucker went out into free agency after his contract is up, like that's a $300 million player. So it's like, you got to get in now and lock them up. And it's just perplexing why they haven't done that yet. And I'm obviously we've established that you are not even close to an Astros fan. In fact, I would say you're trending towards Hader a little bit, which is fine.
Me?
It's totally fine. Yeah, it's totally fine.
Never. I would never hate.
And I am also not an Astros fan, but I do enjoy watching. I enjoy watching them play baseball. I would say I'm an Astros proponent because I love getting to see Yordan in the playoffs. Kyle Tucker's one of my favorite players. I love watching Framber pitch. Even like the younger guys like Hunter Brown and like Luis Garcia. Like I love watching them. And I want those guys to stay together. It's always fun because then you end up with those more like David and Goliath matchups in the playoffs. And you get those teams that like want to beat the Astros. And that's why it's so fun to have them in the playoffs. And it's like Jim Crane is just going to ruin it if he goes the Jerry Jones route. And that's what I'm really worried about.
I'm glad that you brought up Jerry Jones, because that's exactly who I was going to compare it to.
That's what it feels like.
He's just trying to take on too much responsibility. He's trying to make it about him. He wants to be the reason that they have success. And that's why the Cowboys, a fellow Texas sports team, have not had any success in the last 30 years, is because Jerry Jones makes it all about himself. This year they had a good team, and sure enough, they lose in the first round to one of the worst teams in the playoffs because their owner just keeps making about himself all the time. So if he goes down that route, again, this is going to be it's going to be a long next decade for the Astros, because they're going to start offloading talent. I wanted to ask you too, obviously I'm at a certain point where like, I understand. I love the just go all in strategy at times. Like I love it when teams just decide to go all in, because, you only have a certain window that you're going to be competitive. I think a lot of people get dynasties twisted where it's like, we can just go right into the next dynasty. It's like, it never works like that. You have your window and you should go for it in your window. So I understand what they're doing to a certain extent, but I wanted to ask you too, if this doesn't go well, obviously this is kind of like a preseason topic that we might get to a little bit more. But if this doesn't go well over the first, 60, 70 games of the season. Are they going to be sellers at the deadline? Do we see Bregman traded at the deadline? Maybe they say, Altuve, you want to go keep winning World Series? We'll trade you over to someone who's going to go keep winning World Series. What do you think about that? Do you think that's on the board as far as possibilities for the Astros season?
Well, I don't know what they're going to do, but I can tell you that that's what they should do.
Yeah.
If they're, under 500 come the All-Star break, like they need to offload as much as they can. Like that's the opportunity to do it. And then what's great about that is like, you can still re-sign Altuve in the offseason. Like you can still bring some of those guys back if you want, and you can also retool a little bit. You can potentially get some prospects back and restock your farm system a little bit. You can basically just have that year be a soft retool and then go into 2025 and have another shot at it and see what you do. But to be honest, like I don't think that's what's going to happen just based on the moves they've made so far, signing Hader, and just all of the moves they made over the 2023 offseason. And it's concerning. It's concerning.
Yeah, you'll see it.
Dana Click has his workout for him because I think one of the main objectives for him when they hired him was like, hey, we want you to get our farm system built back up. And then immediately, Jim Crane is like, hey, actually, we want Justin Verlander back. So you're going to have to trade some prospects
all your best
to get him back. And it's like, okay, well, we had like basically two good ones left and now they're gone. Now they have like Jacob Melton and Spencer. Don't know how to pronounce his last name. It starts with an A. He's apparently a good arm. Jacob Melton is apparently a decent outfield prospect in AA or something, but it's like you don't have enough to, if you want to get people at the deadline, I don't know who you're trading to get them.
I don't know either. Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and kind of like we talked about, like you'll see it in different sports with different teams. Like they'll see that their competitive window is closing and they'll double down. They'll say, hey, maybe our team's not the best, but we're going to double down. We're just going to go all in and then be terrible immediately after. Yeah. And then there's teams who are like, well, we just know we're not going to win it now. So we're just going to, offload our talent and rebuild. And that's going to be the situation that the Astros are going to be in very soon. And I, for one, am here for it. I'm excited for it. And I am excited to see the end of this Astros dynasty. But wait, hold on. As Meek Mill said, hold on, wait a minute. Y'all thought I was finished. We've said the word dynasty an awful lot over the course of this discussion so far, and the Astros have won a lot over the last 7 years. They've had a really nice run. Good for them. I'm super proud of these guys. But Taylor, I need to know, man, are the 2017 to present Houston Astros actually a real dynasty? I need to know.
Gotta be honest, Matt. I absolutely hate these dynasty and Hall of Fame conversations. They drive me absolutely nuts. They're just all so semantics based, and they're all different from an individual perspective. Like everyone has different ideas of what dynasties and Hall of Famers are. But to me, every dynasty is not created equal. You can't tell me you'd rather have Don Sutton on your team over Nolan Ryan just because they're both in the Hall of Fame. Like they're on two different tiers. Those are two different tiers of Hall of Famers. And so you can't tell me that the Astros dynasty now, if you consider them one, is better than the Yankees of the late 90s and early 2000s, or even the Giants of the early 2010s that won 3 World Series. But in my opinion, I do think this Astros team is a dynasty, but because of the sign stealing scandal and that whole mess in 2017, they end up on the lowest tier of dynasty for me. And a lot of that is still very contingent on how this year goes for them. And also, man, baseball is just a sport that unfortunately is like perpetually in scandal in one way or another since it started. They were fixing games in the early 1900s. We had segregation. I mean, this was a countrywide problem with segregation, the reserve clause, the steroids, the rampant drug use, the spider tack, the sticky stuff. It goes on. And I've also read that the New York Giants were stealing signs with a fucking telescope in 1951. And Bobby Thompson's called shot. They might have known what pitch was coming for. And so there's inevitably going to be another scandal, in the years to come. And once that passes, I'm curious to see how the public perception shifts of this Astros sign stealing scandal. Because obviously there's that recency for us now, but down the road, how are we going to compare that to these other scandals? But ultimately, this is kind of the make or break year for them in the dynasty conversation and for their legacy, because like we just went over, there's a good chance that this is kind of it for them. Like I think they've got this year, maybe 2025. And then unless they start doing some real good GMing over there, I think their window's basically over. I think if they win the World Series this year, they're objectively a dynasty. I would be curious to see if you would agree with that. Okay.
Yes.
Because I think that's objectively true.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, if they make it to the ALCS again this year, that solidifies the dynasty status for me. I think that's enough for me. I mean, making a deep playoff run that many years consecutively, that's enough for me to consider them a dynasty. Remember, a low tier dynasty. We're not comparing them to these other dynasties. But if they don't win the division this year, or if they get bounced from the playoffs early, and that's kind of the end of the Bregman Altuve era of the Astros, then I think basically for the rest of baseball history, this conversation skews almost entirely to they're not a dynasty side.
Taylor, you want to know a word, or I guess two words for a low tier dynasty? Not a dynasty. They're just not. They're simply not a dynasty. And you wanted to know how I define a dynasty. I'm going to let you know, buddy. I'm certainly going to let you know. Okay. So first of all, Taylor, what are we doing? Just what are we doing here? Okay. This is the standard for all sports to be considered a dynasty. You have to have at least 3 championships. You want to know how I know? Because first of all, I'm a Patriots fan, okay? I watched both of the 3 ring stretches of this team, both the early 2000s one and the late 2010s one, okay? The first dynasty after the 2004 Super Bowl, when they won their 3rd ring against the Eagles. It was, the old school days when they still did the thing. Ah, crap, there goes my lights. You got me all heated, man. They still did the thing with the newspaper after the game, when they handed the players the newspaper and they held it up and they were like, oh, this is the headline or whatever. Yeah. So it was the headline on the newspaper, which, by the way, they need to bring that back. I know newspapers are dead. Okay. But they need to bring back that tradition. That was a cool tradition. Okay. But either way, you want to know what it said after they won their 3rd ring in 2004? Exactly what the newspaper said. It said dynasty ! After their 3rd championship. Why didn't the newspaper say it after ring 2, Taylor? I want to know. Why after ring 2 didn't it say Patriots are a dynasty? Why didn't it say that?
Because you're trying to compare football to baseball, and I just don't think you can do that.
Football, it's almost even harder to be a dynasty than it is in baseball. We've seen sustained dynasties for years in baseball. We've seen it for the Yankees in the late 90s and the early 2000s. They won 4 or 5 championships, right? Like that's a sustained dynasty. That is a dynasty.
Yes.
And also, Taylor, how I know 3 championships is a dynasty, I Googled it, God damn it. I went to Wikipedia. I looked up sports dynasties.
Oh, Wikipedia. You went to Wikipedia.
I went to Wikipedia, God damn it. Yeah, I'll be honest.
Did you also write that in Wikipedia yourself?
No, I did not. Okay. I'll be honest, though. I skimmed through some of the other sports. I didn't want to look through every single sport because there was like 30 sports on there. I wasn't going to look through them all. Okay. But listen, I looked through the NBA. Not a single team listed as a dynasty had less than 3 championships. I looked at the NFL. Not a single team listed as a dynasty less than 3 championships. Yeah. You're talking about baseball. I'll give you baseball. They listed teams from the KBO and from Japan and obviously from the MLB. You want to know what all of those teams listed except one had in common? 3 championships. And Taylor, you want to know who the one that was listed as a dynasty that only had 2 championships? This iteration of the Houston Astros. So, Taylor, I'm asking you.
Oh, so that was on Wikipedia?
Yes. Why are we making the exception for this team? Because they have some more World Series appearances and ALCSs. They have extra silver and bronze medals. This is the most participation trophy type shit we've got going on in sports right now. It's for real. It's insane. I've never seen anything like it. And for all of us to give credit, listen, for us to give all this credit to a team that has been best in the world twice in a 7-year span. And by the way, Taylor, I'm not like you, okay? I'm not calling it twice, okay? Because we know, I am not going to ignore it. We know exactly what happened in 2017, 2 close 7-game series in the ALCS and in the World Series when their players have admitted to cheating all the way through. I don't count that as a ring. It has a huge asterisk to me, which also begs the question, Taylor. I'm going to ask you this. Are the Dodgers from 2013 until now a dynasty? Are they?
Based on everything you just said, I don't think you're going to like my answer to that as well.
Are you going to say yes?
I think so, man. I think low tier dynasty for me.
I'm going to die, ladies and gentlemen. We're only.
What
gonna
about
make
the Braves? What about the Braves in the 90s when they won the division like every year?
Hell no, they won 1 ring. You can't be a dynasty unless you have 3.
How many teams win back-to-back World Series ever? Like, how many times does that happen?
Not that many. That's the point. Dynasty is like a exclusive word. It's not just like a word we just throw around. It's like, oh, you got a championship. Now you're a dynasty. No, that's not how it works. You have to win championships wherever you go. That's how it works. It is not just thrown around loosely. Okay, we can't keep doing this with these words. Okay, I don't think anyone besides you thinks the Dodgers that in the last decade is a dynasty. Okay, let me read off their stats. Okay, 10 division titles. Okay, 6 NLCS appearances, 3 NL pennants, 1 World Series title. Okay, and then the Astros in that same time frame, 6 division titles, 7 ALCS appearances, 4 AL pennants, and 2 World Series titles. And guess what? It would only be 1 World Series title for the Astros, and it would be 2 for the Dodgers if the Astros didn't cheat their entire way through the 2017 playoffs. And right now, this would not be a discussion at all. So hell nah, this team ain't a dynasty because you have to win 3 championships to even be considered that. And with the cheating scandal taking 1 away from them, in my opinion, no way will I ever consider this team a dynasty. This is simple, 100% no. This team is not a dynasty, Taylor. Absolutely not.
But you did say if they won the World Series this year, you would consider them a dynasty.
Yes, I would. You have to have 3. We have to hold the best teams to a higher standard. We have to hold those dynasties in high regard. We can't just be willy-nilly throwing the word dynasty out there like all dynasty. Every team who's been good for 5 years is a dynasty. I do not accept that idea. That is not how I'm going to operate. 3 championships. That is it. Again, I Wikipedia'd it, Taylor. When you see it on Wikipedia, you know it's facts.
You know it's true.
It's 100% true.
Yeah.
It might as well be in the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a fact.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree because I would rather look at the best teams of our generation, the ones that have had extended success like the Dodgers and the Astros in their respective leagues, and consider them a dynasty. And again, not on the same tier as other dynasties, but I don't think that means they're not on the dynasty level.
I think that's exactly what that means. That they're just not a dynasty. And again, I don't think, I think this is where we fundamentally disagree. I don't think there has to be a dynasty for every generation. I don't think there has to be. And that seems like that's where you're going, like the dominant team for each, league, or in football and NBA's case, conference is a dynasty. I just don't agree with that. You got to win 3. You got to win 3. You have to win 3 championships. 3. That is the bare minimum.
Okay. That's just a very arbitrary definition. I think if you're dominating your league for 10 straight years, then you should get some kind of recognition for that. And I think dynasty is the word that gives you that recognition for that.
Yeah. And I just don't think that,
and I just don't think you agree with that. And that's fine.
And we're just not going to agree on this topic.
I don't think so.
That's where this is going to go. But yeah, listen, But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on Wikipedia and I'm just going to rewrite some of that article and then have you reread that and then see what you think about it. Well, Taylor, if you write that on Wikipedia, I'm just going to go right back on and delete it. And then that is going to be it for that. And speaking of that is going to be it for that. That is going to be it for us here today for the Bush League Bros. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. Also, comment down below. Are the Houston Astros a dynasty? No is obviously the correct answer. Okay. And also, be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well at Bush League Bros. Also, follow at The House Call Sports on all platforms as well. If you like content from all sports, that is the place to go. And that's going to be it for us. Peace. Did I tell you I woke up at 4 a.m. this morning and watched game 1 of the Australian baseball finals? It's like their World Series equivalent. Dude, that's the most degenerate gambler thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like you just getting on 4 o'clock in the morning. I did have a bet on that game.